Hey, what's up, everybody? Yellow Turtle here with my co-host Beef. Welcome to another episode of the LUKSOfam podcast, brought to you by Keys. The LUKSOfam podcast is meant to be a short and informational show where we provide some takes on the latest LUKSO news in the space. Today, we have a very special guest with us on the podcast. He's a builder and a creator in the space, a winner from this past LUKSO BuildUP #2 Hackathon for building Loopso, a bi-directional bridge between LUKSO and other blockchains. But before we get to meet the man behind Loopso, let's hear a word from our sponsors over at LEEQUID.
LEEQUID, a liquid staking solution tailored for the LUKSO blockchain, enables low-friction staking of LYX tokens redeemable for SLYX tokens on a one-to-one basis. Its custom liquidity pool allows for quick staking changes, avoiding traditional network delays. Supported by LUKSO advisors and launched post-consensus audit in October of 23, LEEQUID ensures a secure and user-friendly staking experience. Be sure to follow LEEQUID on Twitter for opportunities to earn passive rewards while participating in the overall security of the LUKSO network.
All right, let's hop right in. How are we doing today?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for hosting this. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Glad to have you here. And I'm excited to learn more about what you've built over this past month or so. And Beef, how are you?
Pretty good. Did a bunch of errands today. It's a good day. Excited to learn about the award-winning Loopso Bridge. I'm sure you're still riding the high from winning that. What was it? Second place?
Second place.
Hackathon?
Yeah,
That's
as I
awesome.
say, it was second place. Although it wasn't first, doesn't mean that just because the prize doesn't determine what you're building, right? Like a potential of what you're building, right? So I think what we're building is massive, right? So I'm very optimistic, right? Second, third place, no winner. I'm still optimistic about what we're building.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think having a bridge for LUKSO is a critical piece of infrastructure that someone has to build. So
For sure.
we're happy to dive into this with you today.
Let's go.
Before we get right into it, I'll just say, on what you just said about being in second place, Keys actually entered the BuildUP #1 hackathon, and we placed second and then ended up working with the person who placed first to continue building out our idea together. We both saw strengths in each other's projects and then teamed up and built a project on top of that. So, there's lots of opportunities to take your project to the next level.
Of course.
It's very exciting.
In this case, we were part of the BuildUP 1. Well, I was part of the BuildUP 1 team for Lux Oracle, and we had won first place on the social and DAOs category. And then this year we placed second. So it doesn't mean that you have an inferior solution. I actually think that what we built was better than Lux Oracle. It's just how the kind of team decide how they want to award the prizes, right? And I think the first prize winners were totally fair and make sense, right?
Awesome. Yeah, so you guys want to dive in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Do you want to kind of give it? We're not really a technical podcast, but so you can kind of determine the level of technicality you want to get into.
Yeah.
But can you kind of explain Loopso's bridge functions and how it interacts with the LUKSO network?
Yeah, I think how Fabian had during the award ceremony, how Fabian kind of described what we were doing and how bridges kind of operate was very spot on and on point. I think that's partly the reason why he wanted to award a second prize was because of some the technical, flaws that are kind of beyond our reach with bridges, which totally makes sense, by the way, right? Because the way kind of how bridges work is that they're most, if not all, are centralized, right? There's no such thing as a decentralized bridge, unless of course, you have specific functions in this bridge, which you're decentralizing or kind of, abstracting away, right? So without getting too technical here, the way we kind of doing this bridge is a user basically, when they're going from one chain to another, we need to kind of have a system in place that communicates between these two networks, right? So we need what we call a relayer on our bridge. We need the relayer to listen in on the source chain and also listen in on the destination chain, right? And depending on how many chains you're connected to, this relayer needs to listen into all these chains, right? So it needs to listen into funds being sent to it and funds being received to it, right? So it's and how we kind of listen to these chain functions is a thing called events, right? And I think it's very common in Solidity. They have events which are emitted after a function has been successfully minted, right? So what we're doing here is very simply a user wants to go from chain A to chain B, Polygon to LUKSO. They lock that collateral, like USDC, they lock that collateral on Polygon, and then that same collateral gets picked up from the relayer and gets minted by the relayer on the LUKSO chain, right? So if I send 100 USDC, that's going to get locked up in a smart contract on Polygon. The relayer is going to see, okay, this user, Jim, he or Bob, probably Bob is better. Bob wants to see this money. He sees 100 USDC, and then the relayer picks that up and then mints that exact one with the address that he put in on the front end, right? So it's very much like a collateralized like bridge system, right? Which has its pros and cons. Pros means that there's no limitation on the other side. Like for example, Stargate, a very popular bridge, they do it with native tokens, right? So if you're going to bridge USDC, then you need USDC on the destination chain, right? Which is native. But because LUKSO doesn't have like native tokens, it means that collateralized bridging makes more sense, right? As like a stepping stone. As liquidity comes into the system, we can then start thinking about next steps, right? Like native liquidity, right? Like what if Circle and like all these like providers start deploying their own like tokens on LUKSO? There's then going to need to be a bridge that basically like bridges like these two native tokens, right? Like USDC native on LUKSO is going to need to be bridged on USDC native Polygon, right? So it's all to say basically that we got a couple of functions that do that, and we're connected to a couple of chains. I can go deeper into that if you guys want.
No, that sounds like a really good breakdown. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about the aspect of how some of these bigger players for liquidity haven't launched on Luxo. So you're going to be doing like, are you going to be doing like a wrapped version, or what is
Yeah.
Loopso going to be calling?
Yeah, so essentially it's like the same way as like Wormhole works, which is you bridge your token, A token, and then it gets minted on B token. And it's the same exact architecture. Actually, like we literally looked over the Wormhole architecture and we're like, yep, we like this, let's do this. And then we kind of copied it over. We were thinking about doing Chainlink, but ultimately I think we decided again on Wormhole, and we couldn't, like, we wanted to just copy, like literally just fork like Wormhole or Chainlink's implementation. But the big problem is that because LUKSO has these standards which are unique to its ecosystem, unlike any like other EVM chain, it means that it isn't like a simple copy paste, right? It's like you got to put in some customization on like how you listen to the events, how you're minting the collateral, how you're redeeming it, and that's why we created a Foundry library, like for any developer to like easily use Foundry with like the LSPs 7 and 8s. So
That's really interesting. It sounds like a lot of work in it. It's nice to hear that you've tested or at least researched different implementations of bridges before you went and build the one that you thought would be best for the Luxo ecosystem.
yeah, it was definitely like an intense like hackathon, because we spent like the first week researching, and then afterwards when we like kind of got on a team call. By the way, like the team itself, like the way we're composed of is like we're in 3 different time zones, right? So one guy's like in Asia, Singapore, one guy's in Europe, and I'm in like South America right now. So we have to like somehow coordinate between these 3 time zones, and then as well as like make business decisions, right? So it obviously kind of leads us to having like a PM slash like tech lead in the call, just making like executive decisions, and then kind of us deciding like, how we're going to go forward. Does this make sense, guys? Is everyone on the same page? And then you really have to be very regimental when you're doing like a month-long hackathon, especially such a big project like a bridge, because you have to basically build a product from 0-1, and that includes research, market research, that includes like team formation. What are you good at? What are your skills? What's your weakness? Who can lead, right? Like all these decisions have to basically be made the first week, right? And then you start building, and then you got to get the GitHub working. You got to make sure that permissions are set. You got to make sure that everyone is like on the same page. If you're going to take absence, you got to tell the team that you're taking absence, right? So there's a lot that goes on in this hackathon behind the scenes, and like what we build is like incredible. Like I'm so proud. Even though we awarded second praise, I in my head I think we're like the top winners. But I think we came out the greatest.
That's awesome. I mean, I completely agree. You guys, like I said before, are going to be an important part of this ecosystem. You kind of touched on it a little bit ago. What exactly are the unique aspects, the features of Loopso that are tailored for the Luxo ecosystem?
Yeah, so obviously that's a great question, by the way, and I think like the best way to answer that is like, what has LUKSO done specifically that is unique to any other chain, right? And if you think about that, it's essentially like what they've done is what we've like kind of like try to implement and connect to it, right? Because right now, like LUKSO is this like island in this ocean, and all these blockchains have like boats and bridges and ferries kind of transacting, and these ferries have like migrants and cargo and goods and services that transact between each other, right? And right now, like LUKSO doesn't have any of these boats coming to their island because their standards are so, because their I guess like their compliance is like unique, or they have like a different way of approaching things, right? So I'm using this like complicated analogy to basically say that we've had to kind of, we're the middlemen translating these documents between these islands, and then allowing basically for LUKSO to be an open island so that anyone can kind of come in and out of it, right? And hopefully, like we want people to come in and never leave, right? So that's the goal. It's like we don't want to force people to stay there. Like if they don't like it, they can leave. But we want to make sure that the experience is so good that they don't need to leave, right? Like it's just they got everything they need in LUKSO, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so like to answer your question, LSP7s, LSP8s, those are the biggest ones. I'm just quickly looking at our repo, but we have like an SDK, so I think that's a big one as well. I remember like Hugo had mentioned this on the call as well. He said he really liked it, and it was this basically, for those who don't know, an SDK is like a software development kit, which lets any developer who wants to use our like front end or our contract, sorry, should I say our back end, they can use it. You can use our SDK instead and connect it up to their front end, or they can programmatically send funds. So like imagine you want to code like a bot that sends funds between that utilizes this bridge like to send funds or to like do an exchange. You can do that like a little simple script. Like imagine like you want to buy funds that are like on mainnet and you want to buy LUKSO on the LUKSO network. You can use our bridge to do that, right? So do a programmatic swap or transfer is possible through this SDK. We've also created a front end, so that's obviously like showcasing that what we built actually works, and here's a front end. The relayer, which is what I mentioned earlier, that's picking up transactions and picking up events and transactions and executing those functions. We also created a Foundry, and this is actually, I don't know if you guys noticed on our GitHub, but this Foundry library, which doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it was actually started by what's his name again? I keep forgetting it. It was started by Jean, right? He's the lead smart contract devs at LUKSO. So he actually liked that library, and he said, "Wow, this is cool. I'm gonna like it." So it definitely gives us confirmation and validation that what we built is like important, and he's acknowledging that. And then as well, like we built the transaction layer. So I'm super like, this is something we didn't even like advertise, and this itself is probably like its own hackathon project. But we built like the fastest like transaction layer in all of LUKSO, and that's awesome because we built it in Go, and it means that like we've open sourced it, and it means that anytime a user goes into LUKSO and they want to like do some transactions or they want to come out of it, it's going to be subsidized by this relayer, right? So, and they're not even going to notice how slow it is because it won't be, right? And we've done that. So because we've done that at the speed of light basically, and this itself, like we got so many things going on, and we did this in a month. So I'm super proud and happy of what we've done, and my team as well. Like it's awesome team.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And yeah, I think that's something that should be highlighted more. We're gonna have to clip that, put it as a short or something. That's really awesome, and we need to have if your team is willing and able to, we should get them on a podcast or a Twitter Space or a Common Ground broadcast or something. Because yeah, this
For
all
sure.
sounds really interesting. Would love to dive even deeper into all of this.
For sure.
Just to make sure I understand kind of what you just said, you said that you made like one of the quickest relayer kind of transactions on LUKSO, and people won't even notice because they won't have to wait. So like when I think of like my prior experience with bridging to other chains, is what you're saying is that like the downtime that I have to wait and then kind of watch it go through the steps of bridging would be super quick, like either way or just one way?
Like the way the speed is essentially like is in the language itself, right? Like we built it in Golang, which is a fast compiling programming language, right? And most of the team I've seen, and like some of the other projects have like, and this is understandable because all the documentation is in JavaScript. JavaScript's a very well-known language. It's very easy to use. It's not low level. It's high level. But with Golang, it's very low level, which means that, and because of how it compiles and how it works as a programming language, it means that it's able to, I guess, like to put it in simple terms, it's able to programmatically execute code faster than it can on like its other kind of counterparts like JavaScript, right? So it means that like when we're like setting up, when the relayer service, which is kind of like a server, goes live, it means that a transaction that gets picked up by it is going to be super fast by nature. Like it's going to get picked up and it's going to get executed basically probably within the same second, right? Now, depending on depending on the blockchain, if it's on a good day or a bad day, aka if it's congested or not, which I don't think I've seen congestion look so, by the way, but if it is congested or not, it will depend on like how fast the experience is. But if it is on a good day, which I assume it will be, then the experience is going to be super fast and sleek. I don't think that the user is going to notice like it being done through a relayer versus themselves, right? So that's like that's the core difference, right? It's when a user is like signing transactions, you basically want the speed to be the same as like if they were paying the gas themselves, right? So this relayer has to be redundant, right?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, that's super cool. Good for you guys. And very innovative and clever to use a language that, obviously someone on the team already knew, but to use that skill to your advantage to create the fastest relay
Yeah,
service is
we wanted that. We're the
very
fastest, right?
impressive. That's cool. That's really cool. So I want to ask a question that's a little bit off of the questions that we planned, just because I feel like it's a low level question and it might be a dumb question, but I feel like it's something that might come up in people's minds because it came up in my mind. If when you're bridging from Luxo to another chain, I understand that that chain does accept like that token standard, right? Because it's EVM compatible. It's just a smart contract. But is there an issue that you see with like functionality, people being able to use that standard as it moves over to another chain? What are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean by moving that standard? As in, like, are you talking about like the LSP7 standard and moving that over to like Polygon, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I think the way LUKSO has like been built as a chain is that these standards can only really be done and on LUKSO. Like Fabian, basically, when he created LUKSO, he basically said that account abstraction can't be solved on like a protocol level. Sorry, it has to be done on a protocol level. It can't be done through like standards. Like that's what like EIP 4337 is, right? It's saying that we can advocate for account abstraction on like a superficial level, right? And Fabian is disagreeing with that and saying that it can't be done. It has to be done at a protocol level, right? So he disagreed with like the authors, including Vitalik himself, and said, you know what, guys, like I think you guys are wrong, and I'm gonna like, and I believe in what I'm saying so much that I'm gonna make my own chain, right? So he made his own chain and solved it from a protocol level, but also included like all these standards and libraries on top of that, right? Because he like Fabian is very clever in the way that he knows exactly like he was the co-author. Like I don't even have to say it, right? Like, you guys already know he's a co-author of ERC20, right? So he knows exactly what people want and what standards are going to be used. And if he was bullish on ERC20 at the time, then these standards that he's building are also no brainer, right? And so it means that as a consequence that because these standards are so specific to LUKSO, it means that they can't actually be used outside of the chain, right? So it means that like these standards have to be contained within LUKSO, but that doesn't stop us from being able to bridge these standards, right? So what we've done is created a communication layer between, like, let's say ERC20 and LSP7, right? So while they are two different standards, we've basically like we're the Google Translate, right? And we're translating like what LSP7 requirements are to ERC20 and vice versa, right? So I think what we've done is awesome, and that's like how we've done it, right? We're the Google Translate. That's the analogy.
That's really cool. That was the answer I was hoping to hear. That's really awesome.
So, kind of along the same vein, I guess I'm curious, and then this could open up, a series of similar related questions. But say you're bridging Lux to just Ethereum, like if you guys decide to do that on Ethereum, like what the user would be able to do obviously is up to kind of what the market determines. Like because it's a different standard, kind of like you highlighted, but it's converting into an ERC20, you said?
Yeah. So I want to just clarify that when you bridge Lux from LUKSO to mainnet, it's going to be used like any other token. It's going to be the same. Like you literally, it's going to be an ERC20, right? And that's the way we've done it, because if you compare it with like any other ERC20, it's going to be like it's indistinguishable, right? It's the same thing. Developers are going to know how to use it, how to implement it. It's nothing different, right? So there's no issue on that end, and it's the same vice versa, right? Like on the LSP7s, right? Like when a token gets minted on LUKSO, it's also going to be the same thing, right? So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just pretty much confirming, I guess, kind of our next series of related questions. Are there any Do you guys have any plans or for ongoing collaborations with any different protocols or liquidity pools for like wrapped licks or whatever you guys are going to call them in the Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, we haven't gone into talks yet. I think like the biggest priority for us is getting an audit, right? Because without this audit, we're nothing is possible, because we want to make sure that what we've done is secure and there's no like bugs in it. And obviously, like if we go live and it's like a huge success and then it gets hacked, and that will be devastating, right? Not just like to us, but like the whole ecosystem, right? I think everyone will be very impacted. So we don't want to do that, and we strongly like are against anyone taking out implementation and copying, because I am like worried that someone might like fork it and then just deploy it thinking it's like safe and sound when it hasn't like been checked by anyone outside of the team. So I want to strongly like advocate for security and like compliance, and make sure that not just like we're happy, but also like the team at LUKSO are also happy with the code, because they, even though they're not like going to be advocating for this bridge, at least in the beginning, they want to make sure that whatever bridge is connected to the ecosystem is secure, right? So, but yeah, anyway, it's like what we're like looking forward to is this bridge enabling like applications to build on top of us, right? So without a bridge, there's no DeFi doesn't exist, right? So if you're excited about DeFi, then you should be excited about our bridge, right? And the reason I say this is because you can't create, like I saw a couple of like projects on the BuildUP Hackathon build like a swap dex, but the problem is that like in order to build a swap dex, you need to swap between two tokens, right? And where do these tokens come from, right? So unless you're deploying these tokens yourself on LUKSO, they're most likely not going to have any value, if not zero. But if you bridge that value over, then suddenly a DEX now becomes very interesting, because now you're actually swapping between two different tokens which actually have value, and a user that now doesn't want to use an exchange can now do it on chain, right? So we actually could be like, I know there's like a bit of a liquidity crunch on the Lux token right now, but we could actually be solving that as we speak. Like building this bridge could be a path to solving it, if not a different one, right? I just want to say one more thing, and it's just that like there's still like a couple of like LYX tokens that exist on mainnet, like the ones that haven't been like bridged over to LUKSO. So what are those tokens doing there? Like have people just like you know deposited them and like kind of forgot about them? Like what are they doing over there, right? Like do they know that like LUKSO's gone live? Like this is like it's a big question to me as well, right? And that could be something that could be ported over, right, to LUKSO.
I think that a lot of people might be like, we're waiting for, to bridge because they needed something to do with that LYX, right?
Yeah.
And knowing once they got it over to LYX, if we can't get it back to LYXE, that was the risk that they were running, right? So, yeah, but no, it's a really good point. And I don't know if you knew this as well, but I thought this was very interesting. It's something that Sage learned in Istanbul from the smart contract team over at LUKSO, is that the bridge between Ethereum and LUKSO mainnet is actually just a universal profile with like a different front end setup for it, and just with certain permissions that allows it to essentially be a bridge. I don't really know the nitty gritty of how it works, but I thought you'd find that to be interesting if you didn't know that already.
I actually heard about that for the first time during the end of the hackathon, and that was unfortunate because we never actually like looked into it, and we didn't think that UP could never possibly be like a bridge, right? So it's a shame we didn't look into it earlier, but I thought it was awesome like hearing that, and I would have like looked into it deeper, right? So unfortunately, I don't know like exactly how they did it, but I'm curious to know, like, to go in deeper into the code, right?
I just thought it was an interesting little fact.
Yeah.
So, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the Luxo community, and what have you gotten from that? What have you guys incorporated or plan to incorporate?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what's come through the DMs on Twitter is a lot of people are advocating for bridge. They see like it's important, that we need it, that we need to do it fast and soon. But I also want to make sure that the steps we're taking are 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 secure, right? And like we're security first and then like speed, right? And it's not like it's very hard to like, it's like you have like the developer trilemma, right? Which is you want developers to be cheap, you want them to develop fast, and you want them to, what they do is like secure, right? But most of the time you can only choose two, right, out of the three. And like what we've chosen is like, security and and speed, right? So we want to make sure that what we're doing is fast, but also in like a secure way, right? So some of the feedback we've kind of received is we have to have this bridge come out soon and we want it out now. We've also had some feedback on, how are we going to, what networks are we going to scale to. We've also had feedback on, is there a token? When token? So that's like a big one as well. Like, is there a token? What's the airdrop? I haven't really given a lot of thought, but I do have a couple of ideas that we can discuss if you want, like not now or afterwards. I don't know how you want to approach it, but I have a couple ideas on like if there's going to be a token, like how we're going to approach it. But I'm not like too keen on it, but we'll see. And then also like, yeah, like what can you do on this bridge? Like, is it just a bridge like any other, or can it be like an SDK? Can it, is there an SDK? Can anyone just set up a relayer? How do we like, what's the path to decentralization, right? Like that's another big key point that a lot of people kind of bring up is, you know, can you launch this bridge and then can you make it decentralized like now? It's like, well, we can't do that overnight, right? Like to be decentralized involves the community, right? Like that's like how chains work, right? Like without the Genesis validators, there wouldn't be a blockchain, right? Like you need some kind of Genesis like community involved in the beginning to kind of bootstrap that decentralization, right? So it doesn't happen overnight, and that's why like Wormhole are semi-decentralized because they have like these Genesis like validators or relayers that kind of just like that like approve transactions. So we kind of want to go down that path. But I think what would be awesome is like being able to like work together with like some of the big name bridges like Wormhole and Chainlink to see if there's like a way to collaborate together, right? Because building a bridge from the ground up is hard, it's tough, it's rough, tough and rough. I like how that sounds, but it's true, right? And like being able to work with some of the big names and players really gives a lot of confidence in people using that bridge, right? Like when they see a big fat name like Wormhole, well, maybe not Wormhole these days, but something like some Stargate or Chainlink, CCIP, right? Like they think, wow, this is big. This has been around for a long time. They trust the brand more than they trust the smart contract and the engineering, right? Like that's how like trust works these days, right? It's through reputation and branding.
Yeah, totally. And then I'm curious to know if you can share at this moment what some future developments and enhancements to Loopso might look like down the line. I know obviously audits are first, and then is there anything else that you guys have mapped out or are thinking about? And then also definitely look into the Luxo community for this kind of support and feedback and stuff. I know Keys would be willing to help and has some connections over with some people who do audits and things like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely some people that have worked in some really nice places that are building on Luxo. So yeah, there's lots of people within this tiny community that can probably be of some help for the future of Loopso as well.
Yeah, for sure. And like totally thanks for saying that, because I think that's been like the number one thing that has really been exciting for me is just building on a community that really appreciates developers and is there to like help and support them. And I've had like, coming from someone who hasn't really been developing a lot in Luxo, it's just so easy for me to get here and start developing, right? Because of how welcoming the ecosystem is to us developers. You guys just give us tools, funding, whatever, right? And it's a great, like, I think it's a perfect environment, and an environment that you can't really like replicate outside because of how saturated and competitive it is on like other chains. Like if you want to get a grant in Arbitrum, you literally have to like fight with a knife, right? So it's hard, right? And like, and even then, like Arbitrum, they may like tell you like, oh, we don't really like your idea, or we don't really like you, right? So it's harder, I think, with Arbitrum. Even though they have massive amounts of money, they become a bit more conservative with how they spend that money, right? And also just like there's a lot of like nepotism with these like chains, so I tend not to like touch them too much. Not to say that like you shouldn't go and get a grant from Arbitrum. I'm just giving an example here, so not slandering Arbitrum's name. I'm just in just the in just giving this example here. I think like being a close knit community has its perks, right? And I think Luxo is one that has many perks.
Yeah, that makes me really happy to hear you say that and recognize that, because I feel from a community standpoint that we're pretty open and we're really excited to have people come to Luxo. From the dev side, I can't really talk on that as I'm not technical, but it seems like it's starting to pick up now.
For sure. I think like role models like Vlad and what's his, I forgot the other founder as well, but
Jake.
yeah, Jake, that's right. Those two guys, we actually kind of like one of our team members on Loopso. he was working with them on the front end with some of the APIs. Like we had an issue where like we wanted to get data from somewhere, but we didn't know where. So he just pinged like I think it was like Jake or Vlad, and they were like, "Oh yeah, totally. Like we haven't opened it, but you guys can have it first." So we were like one of the first people to like use like some of their tech on like this API that they had opened, which was initially closed source, but they had opened it for us, right? So I think that was like totally cool, just being able to like speak to like I guess like one of the biggest like developers, or I guess like well-known developers, and they were just so casual and cool about just talking to us, right? So that was awesome, and like I really want to work closely with them as much as possible. Like I have an idea, like do you guys want to discuss marketing now, or do you want to discuss that like later, or what do you guys think?
Yeah, we can go and you could say whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I thought it'd be cool like to have a bridge. Like if we like post audits and everything goes well, I thought it'd be cool to like mint some NFTs on the universal page on testnet because they're not out on mainnet yet, and then use our LUKSO bridge to bridge those NFTs. And then what would then happen is that you can basically use our bridge to bridge those NFTs and have like the universal NFTs before universal page is even on mainnet, which is like on LUKSO mainnet, which is like insane, right? And then being able to mint those NFTs so that they could be used for like like I was thinking something like mint these NFTs in collaboration with Universal Page to have like a year of like feeless bridging, right? So it's just you bridge for free holding this NFT, right? And I thought it'd be cool to just hold that like 10 like mint 10 of those and bridge them over and hold them, right? And then once Universal Page does go live, you could like redeem them for the actual NFTs or the main NFTs, right? So I thought that was like a cool way. It's like similar to what like CryptoPunks and Wrapped CryptoPunks does with their NFTs and like their because like they have two standards, right? So they had a bridge or like a contract wrapper to bridge these two like standards. We wanted to actually do a bridge between these two networks to mint and redeem the Universal Page NFT. So I thought that'd be a cool idea. What do you guys think?
So Universal Page is actually deployed on mainnet now.
Oh, is it
And
now? Okay.
yes,
Well, then
and
my
they
idea is
have.
like totally useless then.
Well, no, I mean, hey, the idea sounded awesome. I know that like Turtle would be interested too. Like it's a very interesting idea. I like the aspect of free bridging for like a year or what have you. Plus, it would be like a cool thing to show kind of how early you were.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Think about it, but they're live now. They're not live to the general public yet. If you have a Genesis NFT through them, a Universal Page Genesis NFT, then you're able to kind of play on mainnet, limited in a limited way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way people got those was participating on the test net with them and then giving them constructive feedback.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you could incorporate something like that, I think it would be cool. You'll have to
Yeah,
Yeah.
think about it. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's about thinking about how to get that NFT in people's hands in a fun way, and especially where you're building a bridge, you have a lot of flexibility there, right? Like you could start out by giving maybe like a POAP over on, I think it's on the Ethereum network or whatever. I think it's Ethereum. And then maybe bridging over something like that to represent that gasless fee transaction. Yeah, there's certainly different ways to get things in people's hands that represent something, and then also have them use your bridge to make it actually useful. So I think that's a really great idea.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't think of that. That'd be cool.
I guess I do have one other question, and we don't have to include this in the interview or not, but so that kind of like makes me think about bridging the opposite way. So, say, are we able to bridge only LSP sevens into ERC 20s, or is it also like LSP? I'm sorry.
LSP8 as well, yeah.
LSP8. Okay, so say there's like a bunch of metadata that's in the LSP8, and then you were to bridge it to Ethereum. How is all that extra metadata that was stored on the LSP8 side going to translate over into Ethereum?
That's a terrific question. And like that's why we want to have a call with the team so we can discuss that with them, right? Because I think like we have a lot of decisions which sometimes we can make and we have the flexibility to do, and then sometimes it's not right for us to take, right? And this one specifically with how we want the tokens to be minted and what data they want to be displayed is a very big question that impacts, once you deploy it, it's kind of there forever until you deploy a new set of contracts, right? So it's very important to get right and not to kind of mess up. So that's why I kind of want to have a team with a call with the team to kind of discuss with them, like, what do you guys want us to show? Like, how do you want us to mint these tokens? How do you want it to be redeemed, right? Because essentially, like, there is like a lot of limitation with like this metadata on is it the ERC 721s? I think it is on.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of limitation with in respect to what the LSP8s do. So we have to kind of like fine tune what we like put there, right? But the key thing is that, like, when you're bridging, your metadata doesn't like cease to exist. It's always there, right? It's just when you're bridging, you're going to mint this new token that may or may not have the metadata, right? So it then relies on like I guess like off-chain services to fulfill that gap. So there is like a lot of like work to do on the horizon to kind of work on these details. But for us, like, it's important for us to like talk to the team, understand what they want, and then getting that right, day one. So that's a good question. Like, there's still like a lot of like unknowns for us as well, and we got to talk to the team. That's we got to talk to the team. That's like the overall just discussion.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's all the questions that I had. Do you want to tell our audience how they can follow you guys on your journey and your socials?
Yeah, like, we're just on Twitter right now. No plans for any medium at the moment, but we were thinking about setting up a community grounds. But yeah, it's just loopso_XYZ. Just follow us, give us a follow, give us a like, slide into my DMs if you have any questions. I'm not scary, don't worry. I'll answer anything with all honesty. And yeah, I actually want to kind of leave some. I want to kind of touch on something and ask you guys something, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, like, with the migration, like, there's a couple of tokens that, like, I know what you guys think about this, but I haven't actually like migrated all of my ETH LUKSO tokens, right, over to mainnet. And I know what you're thinking. It's like, why haven't you done it? Like, why not, right? And I don't know if it's just like a feeling or hunch, but I think like these tokens are going to be like collector's items, right? Like, in the future. Like, I don't know what you guys think about this, but like, just like Fabian's like first ERC20 was a mist token, and like those tokens like collector tokens, right? Like, it's literally like collecting stamps as a kid is now like collecting, like, in 10 years time or maybe even more. We're gonna have these tokens, and if you hold some of them, it's like, wow, you're like old school. Like, you're really like into like collecting like these old like firstly like launched like tokens, right? So LUKSO token that hasn't been like LYXT. I'm holding it like a couple of them purely because like I think it's cool, the memory, like having participated in the RICO and just having them on the network and seeing the transactions go through is like awesome. I want like that, like, even if the price of like those tokens go to like to zero to like a million, I'm probably just gonna hold them there, just because like it's just a cool idea. Like, what do you guys think of like this idea thesis?
Yeah, I know that there's a market right now for the Mist token.
Yeah, I hold
And
some of them.
nice.
I wanted to actually bridge those tokens over to LUKSO as well.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I too would probably hold a couple, and as we see it kind of ascend, I'll have to justify that historical importance to the people who are like, "See, you should have bridged them." But I think it is cool. It's something to flex. I also don't agree with right now at this point bridging all of your assets over to mainnet, as there's really nothing that you can do besides validate right now.
Yet.
And I think
Bridge coming
Fabian
soon.
did.
We'll change it all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, that'll change. I think we just got an announcement from the Luxo team that they released on Medium that said that they some like breaking news on 7 and 8. I don't think it's finalized. Like I don't think they want to use the word finalized, but I think it's available, and now the community can use it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so check that out, listeners, if you haven't done it. The Luxo Medium.
Yeah. And on that final note, we were going to have a call with the team today, but because some of the developers are on holiday, we're gonna have a call in like the first or second week of January. So I'm super excited. I thought it was just gonna be like maybe some like the like biz devs, but apparently it's gonna be like a lot of the core devs on this calls, including Fabian himself. So I'm really excited to get on that call, talk to them about, I guess, the future of LUKSO. At least in my eyes, it's the future of LUKSO, right? So it's gonna be exciting.
That's awesome, man. That's really exciting. Yeah, and make sure you say hi from us. We've met definitely a few of those guys: Boost, Sean, Hugo, Fabian. So all great guys, all super helpful and like super eager to help the community and get projects built on LUKSO. So that's awesome that that you got that set up so quickly.
Yeah, I think it was mainly just jumping on the award ceremony call and just asking them, hey, come get on a team. Like putting them on the spot. They just said, well, we now kind of have to do that. So yeah, they're good at keeping their word. So it's awesome to kind of see that.
It's great. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. This has been a really good episode. We learned a lot about the bridge, and you kind of broke it down perfectly for people that are not as technical, so they can kind of grasp the importance of having a bridge and what that will mean well into the future, and maybe some cool ideas for how to get people engaged and involved in using this bridge. So I just want to say thank you again for joining us. Again, really, really good episode. You're welcome back anytime with any of your team members. Yeah, we'd love to continue this talk that we've had today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys hosting this and being supported by Liquid as well, right? Like they're like a project in the ecosystem supporting you guys and doing these things. So it's really great to see people supporting each other, and hopefully like one day we'll be able to sponsor this episode.
That'd be nice.
That'd be cool. Thanks for bearing with me too when I struggled through some of the questions that I wanted to ask. Some of these aspects are not super familiar to me, so it takes me a little longer to come up with what I want to say.
Hey, it's no worries, dude. We're all learning here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, as always, none of this is financial advice. It's just a couple of guys talking about what we love.
Peace out.
See ya.